As Alice said, I was here at King's about 18 months ago, in my final year for law degree, when I really should be revising for a commercial law exam. I was busy looking at trademark applications for new e-cigarette brands. Looking at the space, I saw so much innovation happening. I knew this was going to be something that would change the landscape of smokers, the smoking industry forever. So I said, okay, how do I get a part of this industry? Looking at all the brands, I said, okay, it's currently being led by the tobacco industry. It acquired lots of smaller brands. The only way for me to get a slice was to do something radically different. I needed to sort of shake things up in my own space in order to differentiate myself. So I started to study the competition. All my competitors, when we began 18 months ago, were only doing menthol and tobacco variants, as you would get with a normal cigarette. What we decided to do was to have a special USP. So I said to myself, okay, what's going to be our unique story? Do we have a unique manufacturing process? What are we going to add to the category? So we said, okay, the best place to start is to look at adding different flavors to the category, and making a claim for the flavored smoking tobacco space. One of the first things we did, we started with the design of the product, and I'll speak later a bit more about design. But as you can see from the design, it's quite distinctive, nothing like a normal cigarette, because all our competitors at the time, their products, for all intents and purposes, looked and tasted like a traditional cigarette. So the top of our product here, you can see it has block coloring, and we did that for the purpose of identification. When someone's using the product, we wanted them to be able to identify Bubbly by a solid block color at the top with a black silhouette. Be different. So one of the things I think is very important when you're running a startup and competing against, in my case, big tobacco, billions of dollars, lots of muscle behind them, is to really, really strike a difference in how you market your category. Now, what a lot of brands tend to do is to try to compete. And I think competition is a little bit silly when you're going up against major conglomerates with billions of dollars to spend. You really want to look at differentiating by settling for a subcategory. And in that subcategory, you can actually become a market leader. There is enough space in my market for the flavored tobacco section for us to grow a profitable company. So we decided to focus on that and decided to focus on a new way of advertising to customers. Back in the days, we would see the Marlboro, Lone Ranger, very masculine. We said, okay, we won't do that. We'll switch it up. We'll go with a young lady. We'll make it about inclusiveness. So we'll make our images and our marketing be about sharing with your friends. Now, the next thing I focused on from the very outset was seeding the product. When I say seeding the product, this is slowly planting the product into the space in very different ways. We knew we didn't have the muscle, the distribution channels to get everywhere. So we focused on several key cities. And in these key cities, we would enter in the very same way. We'd first start with a nightclub or restaurant, somewhere that our competitors weren't currently operating. And we would ask for exclusivity. And in return, we would give them lots of promotional support. We'll bring a team down that would work on any given night to promote the product and to speak to users. What we were doing, we were building relationships with our customers in a space that no other competitor was at the time. So when we eventually broadened distribution out from these seeding hubs, we had some brand familiarity and a bit of brand equity with our potential customers. Now, if you're a startup or if you're thinking about starting a business, I'd recommend you get a bank account with Barclays. I'm not promoting them, but I think they're pretty good. The reason why I say that is they're one of the few banks that really support startups. This is someone from our team in a Barclays Bank in Moorgate we bank with, and she's got a pop-up. So Barclays allows you to come in, have a pop-up, speak to customers, you can make sales, and you can really get a feel for how people feel about your brand. We used this several times, and it really was the difference in how we grew the brand, how we iterated, dropped certain flavors, and switched to other flavors. Another thing I would say for startups, when branding yourselves, one big issue that consumers have with buying into young brands is, can I trust these guys? You know, what do they know about this? He was at university last week. So what you really want to do, you want to piggyback on the back of regulation or safety bodies, and you want to really make sure that you shout about it. You want people to know, actually, you know, you take this thing serious. In my space, there's a lot of regulation. You know, I've got regulation coming through my ears, but, you know, we don't hide from it, we embrace it. Because what eventually will happen is, when new people come into the space who don't necessarily take keen or they don't take regulation as seriously, you know, we get an upper hand on them. And eventually what will happen is the market will consolidate, and those people who have put themselves, you know, in the right channels and done the right things from the start are the ones that are going to be around tomorrow. So I would say embrace regulation, get the right bodies to certify you, and really think about the safety of your product and think about the future longevity of your business. Oftentimes you may have to sacrifice a bit of margin in the beginning if you're doing things the right way, but that's what it takes to build a brand, I think. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Well, the first thing to say is that it's a real pleasure to be here and to be talking to an audience at this university. It's a privilege to be speaking to Enterprise Connect at King's College University. My business is a retail business, so what I'm going to be talking about is invention and reinvention within retail, and specifically how that is applied to my business. Now, like most good retail businesses, ours was founded through necessity. So I want to take you back to the late 40s, early 50s. It was the post-war era. It was a time of austerity. Britain and Britons were on their knees. And my father and his three brothers found themselves in a position where they really wanted to create some wealth for the family. What they knew was fruit and vegetable trading from the markets, from their parents. And so that's how they started. But very soon they recognized that there was a new market opening up, and that was a market for ready-made clothing. Now, it might surprise you to hear that when we're so used to a high street that is so accessible and so much choice at so many different levels of price. But back in the late 40s, early 50s, it was more common to be mending and making clothes than it was to be buying them through stores. This is the first shop that we opened. It was in Hackney in 1952. First thing you'll notice is the name above the door is not River Island, it's Lewis. That's how we started. The style of retailing at the time was very different. There was no self-service. It was all pre-selection from the windows. So as you can see, the windows are very crowded. If it wasn't in the window, you didn't sell it. Now, this store may look very old-fashioned to you, but actually at the time, although it was the first store, it was innovative. And what was innovative actually was the way that we displayed the clothes in the windows. We used a special type of wire-form bust, which helped to give some shape to the blouses that we were selling. And the result of that meant it looked different, it looked new, it looked inspiring, and it looked inviting to the customers that passed the door. So, of course, it was a success. And, of course, from an entrepreneurial point of view, timing is everything. It really opened at the right time. The economy was picking up in 1952, and using the innovation of this store, combined with getting the timing right there, we really saw a rapid growth of the business. So what we had in the early 60s was an economy that was very strong. Wage inflation was very strong. There was virtually full employment. There was an insatiable appetite to consume new goods, not just fashion, but electronics and other things. Yet, the business that we had was going down. So what was going on? What was going on was the opening up of a teenage market. And that teenage market wanted to dress differently to the previous generation. This is a generation that was born in the war, that didn't fight in the war. So their attitudes and their view about what was important in life was different. Their attitude was about having fun first, not about duty first. And so they really wanted to differentiate themselves from the previous generation. They wanted new fashion. But not only that, there was a new style of retailing that was emerging. And that was born in the mid to late 50s, and it was the movement in 60s boutique selling. And that was started by a woman called Mary Quant, and you may have heard of her. You may have heard of Bieber, which was another famous boutique at the time. And that really helped to redefine retailing. All of a sudden, retailing was an experience. It wasn't just functional. Self-service, teenagers hung out in these boutiques just to be with their friends. So shopping became entertainment, it became sociable, and where you shopped mattered. Image suddenly mattered. We were one of the first, if not the first, national chain of retailers at the time to recognise this trend. Perhaps it helped that we were located actually not far from the King's Road, which was really the epicentre of the boutique movement at the time. We experimented with about 3 or 4 different formats. None of them worked. But the point here is that we had to constantly step back and reappraise the situation. What was going on? Why were they not working? And it was a constant view about where is the market shifting to, what do we believe in, is our execution wrong, is our timing wrong, or is the idea wrong? And what was recognised, what was believed in, was the boutique movement was here to stay. What customers wanted, what teenagers wanted, was a new style of retailing. And so we stuck with it. We didn't give up. And finally, we ended up with Chelsea Girl. How many here have heard of Chelsea Girl? A few people, okay. So this was the first national chain of fashion stores aimed specifically at teenagers, certainly within the UK and possibly within the world. And it was absolutely phenomenally successful. I mean, sales tripled or quadrupled where we went in and we refitted the stores that were previously Lewis. Another new name above the door. So that was the first challenge, and we met it with a completely new style of retailing and a new brand. And Chelsea Girl was a successful formula for about 20 years. So I'm going to talk to you now about the second major challenge that happened within the business. And actually, there is a lot of parallels here. So let me bring you into the mid-80s. It was a time when the economy again was strong. Consumerism was strong. It was before the recession of the late 80s, early 90s. But again, we found ourselves with a business that was actually going down. So again, what was going on? What was the insight here? Well, there's 2 things I'd like to point out. One is that there was a bit of a demographic shift going on. Those baby boomers and the children of those baby boomers were growing up, and the number of teenagers was actually shrinking, and the number of adults in their 20s was growing. So we're in a shrinking market. The second thing was much more competition. Chelsea Girl was so successful, lots of competition piled in. Topshop amongst them, Miss Selfridge, Eatams, etc. So lots of competition. But also, again, there was an attitudinal change. What was going on was that people no longer wanted cheap, disposable fashion. They were into labels and they were into aspiration. And that's not what Chelsea Girl represented. Chelsea Girl represented fast fashion. So, we experimented again. This time we got it right first time. And this is where River Island came from. Again, you can see it looks very, very different to Chelsea Girl before it and Lewis before that. So what we got here is a business which in its sort of 30-year history has already changed the name above the door twice. Hasn't just come up with new designs, hasn't just changed the interior, it's completely rebranded. And I think you'll find it very hard to come across another example of a business which has had the same ownership and the same management over that period of time and has taken the brave step to completely reinvent itself during that period. Of course, between the time when I joined the business around 25 years ago and today, there's been a lot that's changed. And when I joined, there was no internet, there were no mobile phones. Well, there were mobile phones, but they were the size of a briefcase. Certainly no smartphones. There was no e-commerce. There were no, or very, very few regional shopping centres. And certainly no e-commerce. And so in my time at River Island, we have continued to see reinvention at the business, though the approach that we've taken as the business has become larger and more complicated is we've retained the name, as of course you'll know. And this is River Island from 2003. This is our store in Dublin. So same brand, name, but completely different image again. And I think this is one of the lessons that we have to think about in retail is the importance of constantly refreshing and reinventing in order to stay relevant to your customers whose attitudes are changing all the time, and also to meet the challenges that we've got. And I think I've been fortunate to work in an industry which is very, very tough. There's constant challenges. You're punished for your failures all the time. Instantly. You get the product wrong, you get the image wrong, you get the price wrong, immediately the customers will vote with their purses and their wallets. And they will tell you that they don't like you. So it's a good university in that respect. Not as good as King's College London, but it's still a very good university. I like the fact you get instant feedback. I like the fact that you've got constant challenges you have to meet. And I like the fact there's competition constantly coming in and trying to take your customers. And so any retailer that does not retain an entrepreneurial spirit, I think is a retailer which is likely to fail over time. And if I think back to the retailers that were around when our business started, very few of them exist today. You guys are all aware of how technology has influenced shopping behaviours, but of course there's also technology that sits behind the scenes with retailers that's helping to improve the targeting of our products to customers. It's helping to improve efficiency. And it's certainly an area that we are investing in heavily. So we're reinventing our brand at the moment as not just a fashion brand, but also a technology brand. And we're working with some really cool startups who have some really, really interesting ideas, which we hope to deliver over the next 2 or 3 years. All I can say and finish on is that I think so long as we're in business, I think we'll always have to reinvent and change our brand. So thank you very much.
About 18 months into my career at The Guardian, I realised that I was doing quite well, but I wasn't doing as well as I wanted to be. I wasn't as recognised as I wanted to be. I didn't know that many people around the building. I felt like I could be doing better. So I went to one of my friends, a guy, and he is absolutely brilliant. He's a fantastic guy, works really hard, had this amazing career. The kind of guy that everyone says, you want to be like Charlie. Don't tweet that I've said you want to be like Charlie, because he'll see it and he'll be so smug. Anyway, so I went to Charlie and I said, Charlie, like, what do I need to do? What else could I be doing to kind of help my own career? And he said, well, Harriet, thing is, you know what you don't do? You don't do enough networking. I spend 60% of my time internal networking. 60%. To which my response was, well, no wonder I do so much of your work. But he made a really good point, right? Which was that actually he took the time to go out and meet people and tell them about himself in a very nice way. They all felt that they'd learned a lot about him. But he took that time. And what was really interesting was that then when I kind of looked at how everyone saw him, everyone knew the same things about him. Everyone said the same things about Charlie. They said, do you know how much money he's brought into the business? It's this. Did you see that deal he did? It's the biggest we've had this year. And have you seen how hard he's been working? Poor guy, he's here late every single night. The third is not true. It is categorically not true. But he had told everyone that, and they believed him. And that is the power of personal branding. So if I was to speak to any of you later and I was to say, tell me about yourself in 3 words, could you do that? You probably could. You could probably give me 3 words off the top of your head. I'm sure you're all very smart people. But when you went away later, you'd start to think, is that what I really wanted her to think of when I said those 3 words? And I know you're going to question yourself, because when people used to ask me, I used to say ambitious but lazy, because I thought that was really funny. But what happens is that what anyone remembers is, yeah, she's really ambitious, but she's not going to do it for you. So think about it and really think, if I have to boil myself down to those 3 words, what are they going to be? Because I'm going to give you 3 words now, and you are probably all going to know exactly who I'm talking about. Just do it, right? That's brilliant. That is genius branding, because even if you can't think of the brand name, and really I don't know how you could not, you're seeing that tick. They absolutely have nailed themselves and what they stand for and who they are in 3 words. People do business with people, right? So, and the reality is that prehistorically, we are wired to like people like us. We want to like people who think in the same way that we do, who behave in the same way that we do. So if you can get across what your behaviors are going to be before you've even met the person you're going into a meeting with, you've probably already got a chance of connecting with them.
I realized quite early on that I was only a small startup. There's only my brother, myself, 2 freelancers working on this project. And I had to get my credibility up. So one of my ideas was, why don't we associate ourselves with bigger brands, bigger companies? So over the last 2.5 years since we've been around, we've been fortunate to work with several partnerships. These are some of them. I'm not sure if you're going to recognize many of them, because they're they're more related to the space I'm in, which is online marketing. But these networks and agencies actually manage some of the e-commerce brands that you all would have heard of, like anything from River Island all the way to Ted Baker, French Connection. So these guys are managing the spend. I'm going to give you guys a story now. So I'm going to tell you how I got my first ever partnership. So this is really what started to Yieldify. It was our first partnership. And the first partnership was with Trade Doubler. So Trade Doubler is a network that manages about 800 brands. Some of their clients are Expedia, Hotels.com, Philips, HP. They're a huge, huge company. And I'm going to now paint the story of what happened. So I went to Trade Doubler's office. So there's just my brother and myself holding our laptops, walking away, going to this Goliath office, went to the 21st floor. We pitched our product. I sold my socks off. I was like, wow, this is like, I was telling them all the great things about it. And fortunately, they loved it. They were like, wow, this technology is amazing. And then the next question was, oh, how big is your team? And I said to them, oh, it's growing, because basically we'd hired someone the other day, so we'd gone from 4 to 5 people, so we were growing. Then the other question they asked me was, so where is your office based? Where are you guys based? I said, oh, we're based in London. I'm in East London. I didn't tell them where it was, but it's actually my parents' living room. So now, once we got that first partnership and that relationship went amazing, we started getting more and more partnerships. So, my one tip is just do whatever it takes to get that first partnership. Once you get that first one, things do get much easier. Now we're fortunate to be working with pretty much all the largest partners, and we're their preferred partner. So do whatever it takes. Next lesson was do your research. So we're fortunate that we've got offices across the globe. UK in London is our headquarters. We're based in Monument. We have an office in New York, Berlin, and Sydney. So our UK brand was, it was considered as, we were known to be really friendly guys, great service, really innovative product. And I thought that this same brand I could take all across the world and everyone would love it. So there I did. I flew to New York with my laptop. You don't have to take bags, just a laptop. Got into New York and I was telling everyone the story about Yieldify, and it became quite apparent that the same brand that I'd built up in the UK wasn't that message that I'd had in the UK that was successful didn't actually apply to the US, because in the US things are actually much more different. They're much more direct. They just want to know, oh, how much can your technology make for us? They're just wanting about the money, the return. It was just much more direct, and our business was built on partnerships, relationships. So I then had to change the whole branding and actually, make it more relevant to them. Germany. In Germany, again, I went with my great brand I built up in the UK, went over there, but things were very different. In Germany, they're much more into the attention to detail of the brand. They want to exactly, how will this software impact my website? How will the services work in my website? So they were just very, very granular. So again, I had to change my brand again. In Australia, fortunately, they actually like the UK. They like to drink, like to party, so it was much more simple. So I could use my UK brand and bring it to Australia, but one thing I realized was, just do the research on the culture, who your audience is, because, in each region, it needs to be different.
Ben, my question for you is, and it's kind of like a weird question, but is it necessary to have consistency with a brand? And if so, what would you say has been River Island's consistency since your conception? And then second question, what are your 3 words? How would you describe yourself in 3 words now, rather than the lazy thing before? Yeah, thank you.
I like to think of brands as needing to do 3 things. I think they need to stand for something, and they need to do so consistently, so that you build up a reputation. I think they have to be newsy. They have to do things that are fresh, that are different all the time, to command attention. And they have to build personal relationships and actually understand how they can build a customer base, literally customer by customer. So I think brands have to do that all the time. So the consistency piece is very important because there's a lot of noise out there. Consumers are being hit constantly by messages. So if you do stand for something, you keep pushing the same message, then there's much more chance that that the customers are going to buy into that and believe in it and believe in you. But at the same time, you've got to recognise when the game is up, when they no longer want it, and then that's about reinvention. And so you have to then go through a process of reinvention and then again be consistent around that messaging. What have we stood for over the 60 plus years that we've been in business? Creativity, I think is one of them. Efficiency. Bravery. 3 words that come to mind.
Sorry, is it unimportant for people to know that it was Lewis, the second company, and River Island as well?
Yeah, it's not important.
I think what's really interesting about that is that kind of that creativity, bravery, those are almost your values, and then the brand comes after that. So it's like knowing what you are deep down in your heart is the important thing, and then you put the brand on top for where you need to be at that time. So my 3 words currently, they do change, but currently they are funny, pragmatic, and ginger. So funny because a lot of my work is people want to know what the style is that you're going to be. Whether you're writing or speaking, they want to know, is this, what's she going to be like when we go on? So I push funny. That's kind of my USP. Pragmatic, I do a lot of work with businesses around their diversity stuff. They can be quite scared of me because I write for The Guardian and I write about women's issues, and that instantly marks me out as someone who might be quite hard to work with. So I like to say, no, I'm pragmatic. I'm about finding solutions. I'm about helping you get to places. And ginger sounds hilarious, right? But actually, because I think it sums up a lot of my stuff quite neatly in one word, we have some deep-rooted beliefs about people's hair colours and what they stand for. And we tend to think that ginger people are quite feisty, quite fiery, quite brave, quite go-getting. And I like to think that I'm all those things, so that puts it in one word.
Oh, tonight's event was really inspiring and very interesting. I thought the audience were great. And I'm really encouraged by the amount of interest in entrepreneurship that exists within King's College London and so generally within London and the rest of Britain.
I think one of the best ways to learn in setting up your own business is by learning from other people's mistakes. As bad as it sounds, that is how I've tried to learn, and it's great to come to these events because you can just pick up if you pick up one thing, or maybe even 2 if you're lucky, the event's worth it, and hopefully you can apply that later in your career and in your own startup. So
I thought it was a great event. I thought you had amazing questions, such an interested and engaged audience, which is always lovely to be a part of. I learnt a lot, which I always really appreciate. And I think it's so exciting to see kind of that buzz and excitement around entrepreneurship and starting your own thing coming up from all levels. So I really enjoyed it. Thanks for inviting me.
I think it's always good to hear from someone who's either doing it or has done it. It only takes one small thing someone could say to spark, that sense of entrepreneurialism, that spirit in someone to get up and do something. So you never know who might have been inspired tonight and may go on to create, the next Facebook or a Twitter or whatever it may be.
I could not recommend it enough. I think because we started our business the same night we attended our first Enterprise Connect, we know the importance of what it's like to learn from all the amazing panellists. We went from knowing absolutely zilch and being completely incompetent at business to actually knowing a little bit and actually being okay because we absorbed all the information and experience of all the speakers, and we are indebted to every single person that we've heard from. So we could not recommend it highly enough. Go and learn and get an education. It's free and it's here and they're here on your doorstep, so why not?